Well, Japan now has voted for the first time in 54 years to change the fundamentals of their political system. They're bringing into power the Democratic Party of Japan, which is a hodgepodge of various groups that have either been disaffected from the long-time ruling Liberal Democratic Party or have come up from other parties, the Socialist and others. And they formed a loose coalition which for the first time has really offered Japanese voters a choice between two parties. We had an episode in 1993 for a few months when the Liberal Democratic Party was out of power. At that time, the people behind the throne in the new DPJ left the LDP, but that was just a short period sojourn, really, for the LDP. The LDP really didn't learn many lessons from that episode, and they fell back into their old ways until Mr. Koizumi came in a few years ago. He tried to change the LDP in the way it does business, but again, they fell back into their old ways. And now DPJ is coming in and offering the voters a choice. This probably, therefore, marks the initiation of a real two-party system in Japan. The LDP may not do well in the next 2 or 3 elections because they really have fallen far. But I think this will be a chance for them to reconsider, regroup, rebuild, and they'll be back in competitive maybe 3 elections from now. The economic agenda is one that they put forward as, especially in ways that kind of irritated American officials, as breaking away from the American model. The DPJ was running against recent efforts to privatize industry and governmental institutions by the LDP in recent years. And there's been a backlash against some of those efforts of privatization. So they're talking about renationalization of the state postal bank, postal system, and a number of other areas. Also to put more government involvement in industry. This is a politically appealing theme prior to the election, probably hopelessly difficult to implement once they're in government. And I suspect this is an area where we're going to see some change from the campaign rhetoric to the rubber meets the road reality of actually being in charge of the economy. Well, the general reaction in the region to the DPJ victory is pretty positive. Mr. Hatoyama, the new party leader, has spent a lot of time cultivating good relations personally over the intervening years since the party was formed, and his party manifesto has articulated a more balanced approach between Japan's long-standing interests with the United States and improving relations with its Asian neighbors. So the Chinese scholarly community, official community, pretty positive. South Korea, kind of hopeful, but more realistic than the Chinese are. And I think that over time there will be an improvement in tone, but things are not going to change that fundamentally, that we'll see, reconciliation of the very difficult issues that continue to exist. Territorial counterclaims, both at sea and on the islands, among Japan, South Korea, and Japan. I think the foreign policies of Japan, the focus on the United States alliance, and Japan's reluctance to get terribly involved overseas in anything that involves risk, probably will not change very much. I say this because Japanese polls consistently indicate that's where the public is. And even if Mr. Hatoyama and his party, which is not a very coherent party, if they start to go down the path of taking risks, and they say they won't, they want to reduce them, and if they go down the path of putting some distance between Washington and Tokyo, the public's going to pull them back. And so I think the chances for major change in foreign policy direction are pretty small. There'll be some issues of tone, there'll be some issues of expression, articulation, but not really of substance. Well, I think the most important impact in U.S. Japan relations will be in the hard work it's going to take American diplomats and officials otherwise to get Japan and the U.S. to accomplish what we normally accomplished with quite experienced bureaucrats and politicians in the old days. I have to say we're starting from a low base. In recent years we've had 6 defense ministers. in Japan in very short order, a rapid sequence of prime ministers, and an enduring bureaucracy. So we haven't had a very high bar to cross for the DPJ now that it's in power. And I suspect that because many of the people coming into office are completely inexperienced in administration, they've not been groomed through a series of promotions in the bureaucracies from vice minister to minister and the like. They're going to stumble, they're going to misstate, they're going to need to be advised. They're going to be reluctant to take advice from bureaucrats because the bureaucrats are part of the old system and they want to create a new system. And so, as I say, it's going to be a challenge for American officials to make appointments, get in, explain our position, then go back and do it again and again in the hopes of persuading Japan to do what we would like them to do and for Japan to do what's in its own interest. I think it's important to think about how the President of the United States and his Prime Minister counterpart will interact. Mr. Bush, as President, prized the initial reaction he had with his counterparts. And if the person got off on a bad start, it almost never recovered. If it got on to a good start, it almost never deteriorated, except in the case famously of Vladimir Putin of Russia. I think that's much less the case with Mr. Obama. President Obama will be more matter-of-fact, even-tempered, low-key. So I think it takes some of the personality effect out of this relationship. I have my own personal suggestion to set the tone for this relationship. We ought to get a rap singer to do a song that rhymes Obama and Hatoyama in a good way and have them sort of set the mark for the public to identify that we have a new leader in Japan who is trying to work with the United States and with this President Obama. I don't think that policies of the United States generally in Asia will be deeply affected by this. There's a possibility that the Japanese will not renew the refueling of American ships that are operating to help our activities in Afghanistan. Several prime ministers have gone down in flames, winning those votes in the Japanese Diet, and there's no reason Mr. Hatoyama would want to be self-sacrificial at this point. They may find some compensating gesture, but these are not fundamental. These are, kind of add-ons to the alliance. In the previous Bush administration, they were treated as something of a test case. Are you with us or against us? I don't think the Obama administration is going to make that kind of test case, and will seek to get the Japanese energies focused on where Japan is most capable, providing economic and technical assistance in a host of areas. I'd love to see more in Afghanistan, certainly in maintaining the environment and humanitarian assistance capabilities that allow us to address problems as they arise through South Asia, East Asia, even Africa.